The Elgin Police Department is dedicated to working in partnership with the community to promote safety and enhance the quality of life by serving with professionalism, encouraging open communication, and embracing diversity.
Engaged.
Partnering with our citizens and involved in our community.
Progressive.
Embracing innovative strategies while maintaining proven practices.
Dedicated.
Serving with integrity and professionalism. Elgin became an incorporated city in 1854 and installed its first police marshal, George W. Renwick. Over the years, the title of the head law enforcement officer changed from marshal to chief. And although the role has expanded, one duty has remained consistent: to ensure law and order for the citizens of Elgin.
It's time now for Fridays with the Finest, featuring Elgin's current police chief, Anna Lally, on Elgin's hometown radio station since 1949, WRMN AM 1410 and 96.7 FM.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Fridays with the Finest here, WRMN AM 1410. This is Matt McNeil in the hot seat here for the 9 o'clock hour. And I'll be on, of course, as well, too. We've got Steve Thorne coming up at 9:30 for the Community Spotlight, and then also Music Memories. And then, of course, out to lunch. We've got a whole list of fun things to, of course, talk about today. Thank you, Chief Lally, for joining us, as always.
Morning, how are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you today?
Good, thank you. So today we are going to kind of do a little bit of, a preview of season 2 of Somebody Knows Something. So we do have a new detective that is joining the cold case unit. I think everybody who has been following this, and there are a lot of people that are following it, Detective Matt Vartanian, who was here with Andrew, so Detective Houghton. For the first season, he was promoted to a sergeant, so he's on his way doing that. So we had to, obviously get a detective there to work with Andrews. And so for the listeners out there, you're going to get to meet our newest detective, which is new to the unit, the cold case unit, but he's not a new detective. So Chris Hall is here, Detective Chris Hall, and he's going to introduce himself. Andrew, I think everyone has seen many, many times, so they probably know him, and he's kind of the face of the cold case unit. And so we're going to talk everything season 2, what to expect, talk a little bit about season 1, give some dates out here because we have been asked by a lot of people, what's next, what's happening, what's going on. So that's why we're here today. If anyone has any questions or want to call in to talk to the detectives, please do. So we'll start off by, let's start off with you, Chris, right? So,
Yep.
Andrew's a pro. He's like, I got this. So let's talk, introduce, who are you? How long have you worked for the Elgin Police Department? Why did you want to, you were a detective in our Major Investigations Division, but why the cold case unit? So just, talk about yourself here a little bit.
Good morning, Detective Christopher Hall. I've been with the Elgin Police Department for just over 9 years, primarily in the patrol division, afternoon shift and night shift patrol. I was a former member of the Elgin SWAT Department, Elgin SWAT Team, Emergency Services Detail. This past May, I was given the privilege to become a Major Investigations Division detective, focused primarily in property crimes, burglaries, car thefts, assisting on other major investigations. With Matt getting promoted to sergeant, there was a void in the unit. The unit is young, it's quickly developing, and our administration within the division said we'd like someone to step up and essentially fill the role that Matt was in. I put my name in the hat, and I said, this work is fascinating. I could not be more excited to just even be a part of Karen's case and help in any regard that I could. And I was given the privilege to be on the cold case unit about a month and a half ago, and things are just taking off.
What year did you get hired? How long have you been?
2016.
2016. Yeah. Okay. So, and how long have you been in the Major Investigations Division?
Just over a year. Yeah.
Huh.
Things
okay.
are happening.
For some reason, I think it's longer than that, but okay, time goes by quickly.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Okay. And Andrew, for the listeners, they probably do know you, but in case we have new listeners, who are you? What do you do?
So I'm Detective Andrew Houghton. I've been a police officer since 2007. I've been here in Elgin since 2012, and I was in patrol here for about a year, and then I became a detective in 2013. So I was a detective doing mostly, we we kind of get everything. But I was mostly focusing on crimes against children, sex assault cases, things of that nature, and then working homicides with other detectives. I did that until last year, and then May of 2024, when we created the unit, I came over as the first full-time person. Matt was working part-time with me until he got promoted. So we're just a little over a year old, but we really didn't start looking at cases until probably October,
Yeah.
November, because there's just a lot of background stuff we had to do first. So yeah, we're ready for we're working
Season
a couple other
2.
cases and starting
Yeah.
to work on season 2 and just kind of adding Chris into the mix and a lot of things kind of going on. So
Yeah.
So I think for the listeners, just to kind of recap, season 1, we focused on the Karen Sheepers case, missing person case, missing since 1984, and ultimately that resulted in, us finding her. And, that period, and again, it seems like it was so long ago, but it was just earlier this year. So,
that was March.
yeah, so it just, time goes by quickly. But, yeah, so you guys are putting some pictures up there if you're watching on YouTube. So that case, and just kind of finding her remains and, missing since, 1983, and how that case worked out and just, you're starting this new unit. It's a cold case unit. We talked a lot about the why. The why is very important. Why are you spending resources, time, energy, money for a unit like this? And, the simple answer is, we need to ensure that the people in our community who are not sure what happened to their loved one or want answers, that we do everything possible to ensure that we find those answers. Now, we may not. I mean, this case was, I think a lot of things lined up. I think the way that, stuff like this, in my opinion, was just meant to happen, right? It was just a matter of time. So, you do get a little, you get a couple breaks here and there, which probably, some of the breaks they created themselves. Some of them was just, that's what the universe wanted to give us at the time, right? So I think a lot of that was just, but also more importantly, it was having the goal that there is no, we're not going to we're going to do everything we possibly can. And it's that type of mentality. And, that, constantly just pushing and saying, what can we do better? How can we do it? What are we missing here? And that constant self-reflection and criticism of ourselves and pushing, which I think you see the outcome. So, as we move forward to the cold case unit, I'll have Andrew talk a little bit about, what's to come in terms of season 2. We just recorded what you're calling the bonus episode for season 1.
Yeah, like a wrap up kind of.
Wrap up. And I think we're going to release that next week sometime.
Okay.
So that's going to kind of just, it's a little bit of just a recap of season 1. Me talking a little bit about the unit, the future of the unit, because the end game is to never have a cold case unit. Mm-hmm. In theory, right? Like that's the success of the unit, right? The success that the short-term successes are you're solving cases, you're resolving. The long-term is 10, 15 years from now, there is no cold case unit at the Elgin Police Department, that there's absolutely no work for that unit.
Yep.
So you disband that unit, right? Now, in essence, you think, well, that's kind of counterintuitive, right? You're creating a unit to disband the unit. In this instance, yes, right? Because then all your cases are solved. There aren't any cold cases, or the cases that are outstanding, there's not so many of them where it's okay for a detective to have that caseload. So, Andrew, talk a little bit about, I guess, what to come in season 2, and then, we'll talk a little bit with Chris and how have you kind of started to get involved in cold cases and what you've been doing these past couple months.
Yeah, so for season 2, we had a hard time selecting a serialized case that we could do. Like Karen's case, we did 12 episodes. We walked through the investigation. We're hoping to do that again at some point in a future season. But we kind of wanted to keep the foot on the gas, right? Like we've had a lot of downloads. We've had a lot of people listening. We've had a lot of tips come in. So we made the decision that we have some cases from the 1970s. Those are the earliest cold cases that we have. And we decided, well, let's start at the beginning. And we're going to do kind of one-off episodes, maybe 30 to 40 minutes on each of our cases from the 1970s. So we have 5 homicides in Elgin, and we have a case that was sort of linked to Karen's case. That's another area case that we may talk about. We're kind of in talks with the family about what we're going to do with that, if we're still going to do that sort of thing, because we do want to be very victim-centered. That's been our big approach, and we want to make sure the families are okay with the information we're putting out. So we've reached out to the other families on the cases that we have. if you are related to any of these people in these cases, if you have knowledge of their backgrounds, we would be happy to talk to you, because we understand that some families want to be involved, some families don't want to be involved. Karen's family was very involved in her case, but that may not be the case for everyone. And we want to make sure that we're victim-centered in that approach. But we want to humanize who these people are in our cases. So we feel like it's helpful to have a friend, a family member, someone that was in a relationship with them, give us some background on our victims, because we want to have every episode be about our victim, not about the suspects, not about glorifying or sensationalizing stuff, but talking about who these people are. So, for example, one person is in 1975, a gentleman named Maynard Chester Holly, who was murdered at the Yellow Cab Company here in Elgin. We've spoken with some people in his family. We're going through that process. We went and visited the site the other day where he was killed. And our whole goal is to talk about who he was, what his background was. He had a family. He was in the military. He had a job here. All those sorts of things about him, and then also put out a little bit new information that was never released on his case to hopefully generate some leads in his case. And that's our goal. So if you have information, if you know any of the victims in the cases that we're talking about as we go through them, please reach out to us, because we want to keep that really victim-centered approach to it. We want to kind of balance looking at these cases and trying to solve these cases with still being respectful to the family, respectful to the victim, that sort of thing. It's kind of a balancing act.
Yeah. So Chris, you've been, kind of just jumping right into it, and the success that Matt and Andrew had in season 1. So a little bit of pressure, right?
Yeah, no pressure at all. None.
There's none.
Yeah.
No, but the thing too is, like, I think, if that first season, imagine, I mean, again, we knew you go into that, you could have had a completely different outcome, right?
Yeah, we were prepared to go in and do 10 episodes or 12 episodes and go, okay, we didn't find anything. We have to move on.
Yeah, and I guess that's still a great outcome, because you're talking about it, you're generating new leads. So you don't know what that conversation could do for you 5 years from now, right? For the next detective. So it's still a win. This was just, again, something that I think is the bar has been set very high, right? Which, I like that, because it's like, that's how it should always be, right? This is what we aspire to do. If you're not going to do it 150%, why even bother, in my opinion, right? So you walk into this new unit, here you come, you're following Matt, right? And now here you're the new detective. So how has your experience been? What interests you about the work, and what are your thoughts on jumping into a cold case unit?
Seeing the impact that Karen's family had with finding her, it's nothing short of inspiring. You just seeing what that did for them, and giving them that closure, and giving them something over 42 years. Just, not every case is going to be the same, but if I can impact a family positively, just one family, at least out of all these cases, that's a win for me. And at the end of the day, like, there's loved ones out there that they're never going to get to see again, and they don't have the answers, and they're looking to us to find those answers. And I think the challenge behind it all is what is also inspiring. It's like solving a puzzle, and sometimes I have to pinch myself, and I'm like, oh, we're the guys doing it. It's not somebody else. We're the guys doing it. And I think that challenge, it's that the internal pressure. It's a good thing to have, because it's I wake up every day and I'm like, how are we going to get closer to the answers for this family, for this case? It's definitely been a bit of a learning curve. We're walking down to our evidence lockup, and it's like walking into a time capsule. And you're looking at cases that are 40 years old, 50 years old, 30 years old, and you're just seeing like what we have, what we don't have. And every case is specific. Every case has its challenges. Every case has its advantages. And I think it's a lot of work, but it's to me, like I said, it's fascinating work, because I'm, you're sifting through and looking at different angles to approach on this case and that case, and it's just, no two cases are the same, and I'm just fascinated by it.
And I think it's like I think what Chris just said too. So, he's waking up every day and he's thinking about, like, what are we going to do for these families, right? Like, this is where people, when you talk about the daily grind of your work, right? So people wake up in the morning, they go to their job, they drink their coffee. Sometimes they feel like they're in like this, it's the same thing, right? It's Groundhog Day. And, you do, yes. But sometimes, right, when, there's an element of that to people's jobs and stuff. But then when you take the, I guess, like that kind of philosophy and you think about what he just said, right? Every single day I have the opportunity to do something to affect a family that no one right now in the world can do except these two. It's that simple. There's no one else that could charge someone, that can go and talk to state's attorneys, that can go and talk to witnesses. It's these two. So that weight of that responsibility is also the inspiration, right? The weight of that responsibility is also the motivator, right? The weight of that responsibility is also the kind of, wow, like what a gift that I get to do this, right? Like he just said, we are the people. Yes, you are. You are the people, right? Yeah. It's not your sergeant, it's not your lieutenant, it's not your commander, it's not even the chief of police, right? It's you two, right? And I think, again, finding the right people to do, to create this unit was something that was very important to me. You have to have the right people. If you get people who are, and the definition of right person is very different for each position, right? In this case, you need people that can connect with people as humans, right? I mean, you could be very, very good at your craft, which is you're a great investigator. You know how to do this. You know how to write a search warrant. You know all these investigative techniques. But if you sit down with a family member, they don't connect with you as a person, they're not going to give you information, right? And I think that was really, in my opinion, too, what Andrew and Matt brought to the Sheepers family. It was, you see the connection that you have when they're in the room with each other, and that's why they were able to do as much as they were, right? The relationships matter in all our work. It's not just about, well, I can do this and I know how to do this and I'm a really great police officer, really great detective. That's all great. But if you don't know how to speak to people, respect people, understand the differences, their conflict, right? And you're not trying to find that middle ground, you're ineffective. I've seen it over and over and over again. So I think that Chris, again, I don't get involved in the positions in the police department, right? It comes through their command staff. Unless I have some huge heartache, I'm like, good enough. If that's who you guys want for your position, go for it. I don't get involved in that. But this with the cold case detectives, I do, because it's something that, is very important to me that first Andrew has somebody that can, be that partner that Matt was, because that's where you see some of the success. And Chris has all those characteristics. And we just recorded a podcast, right? We were here 2 weeks ago, and it's the first time that he's recording it, and he was great, a natural, like just awesome, right? And it's because he's just being genuine, right? He doesn't have to sit there and fake, I got to watch what I say, or I'm really kind of like, kind of got an attitude, so I better not have an attitude. Like, he doesn't, right? So this is a perfect fit. And I think that hopefully this next season, you'll get to see, I think a lot of people, Andrew has been in the newspaper, been on radio shows, being on television. So now here he comes. And like, that's the other part to this position is that, most detectives like to do their work quietly. I don't want to talk to the media. I don't want to be on Facebook. Let me be, right? And it's like, well, this is a little bit different, right? Yep. But you guys just also talk about that you just went to the conference, the podcast conference. So talk a little bit about that. What did you guys do? What did you learn? Where are we in terms of kind of like, the I guess, the global community of podcasting? So talk about that.
Yeah, so we went to, there's a smaller podcast convention called the True Crime Podcast Festival. This year was in just outside Boston. So we went there. There was maybe 20 or 30 other different groups that do podcasting, all true crime. The nice thing was, for this specific convention, everyone is very victim-centered and like advocating for victims. So the majority of the people there had podcasts that were unsolved cases, unsolved missing persons cases. A lot of them worked directly with families or with advocacy groups with families. They would have families on their episodes. So they're really big on focusing on cases that are not your super sensationalized, like, hey, we see this case all the time. It's on every news channel. They're talking about cases in rural Tennessee and rural Maine and rural Massachusetts where those types of cases are not getting media coverage around the country, and they're trying to push out those cases. So we met a lot of really great groups. I started listening to some of the different podcasts of people that we met with, and it was nice. It was helpful. I think it was helpful for us too to hear some of them And then, we've had feedback from some of them who are listening to our show and kind of going back and forth. And it was a good feeling in that you had stuff that we're listening to that they made, and you're like, okay, we're at least in the same ballpark as these other groups that are doing this. We're not like some outlier that's our content isn't good, our editing isn't good. Like, people were very happy with the way our sound quality was. Ben did a great job with our first season. They were really amazed that our administration were the one that pushed us to do this.
Yeah.
They were really amazed that we had a local radio show that was a radio station that was helping us produce it. Like, they all thought that was kind of a nice way for us to be doing it. So it was really great. It was a lot of good connections. We talked to a guy that does an advocacy convention. So they have a lot of people from families that go to this advocacy convention. His brother was murdered when he was 6. His brother was a toddler. And so that's what he did with his life, is advocate for victims. And a lot of the people we met were people who, we met a woman whose son was murdered. We met another woman whose son was murdered. And they are using that to advocate for policy changes, advocate for cold case units, advocate for, ethical true crime that's not just some sensationalized version of stuff where people are just making money off of the backs of other people's tragedy. So it was really, really great. It was really good networking, and we had it was a really good time.
I think the thing that caught most people by surprise is they look at our name tags and they see the badges and they say, "Wait, you're active law enforcement?" I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, "I didn't know that law enforcement does that." I'm like, "We're kind of at the forefront of it."
Yeah,
And
we were the only active law enforcement people there.
Yeah, and I think it just shows the transparency. It shows, I had a woman come up to me that wasn't a content creator, but she bought a ticket to attend the show, and you can go around and look at each podcast and show that's featured and ask questions, and essentially, she was leading the investigation of her childhood friend that was abducted with her. She was a witness to it, and she was a child at the time. But she said, "How do I do this? What steps would you take?" I said, "Is your local law enforcement agency helping you out?" She said, "Not exactly." It was a small town in Massachusetts. So I'm literally trying to work in a nutshell, give her tips on her own friend's case. And, just they didn't get that type of treatment back in Massachusetts at their local town, and it's like, it's refreshing, for her words, it's refreshing to see law enforcement talk to me in this manner and give tips, and that's essentially what we're doing. We're trying to elicit tips with our podcast.
Yeah. We did a panel, so we had people come and talk to our panel.
Yeah.
Where the three of us presented kind of what Karen's case a little bit, and just kind of things that we learned in the first season, things that we're still trying to figure out. And a big part of that was advocating for people to go back to their local communities. And we said a couple things. One, you're not law enforcement. You have the power to advocate for a full-time cold case unit, because there's not that many of them around. And that's the only way, at least in our opinion, especially the training we've gone to do these cases. And we said you can also advocate for your local law enforcement, even if they aren't having a full-time unit. Advocate for them to use people like Chaos Divers. Advocate for them to use civilian groups that are trying to do the same thing but are not law enforcement, because that helped us a lot. And advocate for the victims in your cases to be talked about in media, to be talked about in podcasts, to use media, whether it's a podcast, whether it's local television, whether it's local radio, to get more information out about the specific case that you're interested in. If law enforcement is not actively talking about that case, find a way to do it ethically, or push them to try other things to put that information out there.
And I think that is, I think the going out, and so I think the true test too is, we're here in Elgin, we're in this little bubble, and you're like, yeah, we're doing this, right? And so, for me, the measure of success, that's always like a moving target. But for me, you go out to these other communities and you talk to other police chiefs, you send your officers, they go different places, they learn this stuff, and they come back and they give you that feedback, and you're like, okay, we're on the right track, right? Like we're, and we're also kind of setting the trend, which I love to do that, right? Like a lot of times I think people are afraid to be the first because you're going to get criticized. It's so, and I've said this to these guys, that when I said we're doing a full-time cold case unit, I heard the rumblings in the police department, right? Why are we doing it? Why are we raising resources? Which I love that feedback, because to me, that's kind of like, okay, right? Like, this is something that, it's ruffling people a little bit, which is not necessarily always a bad thing, right? Because it's something different. It's something that makes, it's a challenge. So, this group they do their thing, Matt and Andrew, they knock it out of the park. But I told them, I said, if that resolved in nothing, right, there would be criticism. People would say, you spent all this money, you have all these people out there, all this overtime, you have and I was fine with that. I was absolutely fine with that, right? Like, I knew from the very beginning, this could be a result of it. But in my opinion, all of this is a positive thing. Even if we didn't find Karen, it is the start to maybe not Karen, but somebody else, right? And so even though that case truly was once in a lifetime, there's no doubt. But other things could happen once in a lifetime, right? So, how it happens, I think, is the once in a lifetime. But the outcome, we may have more success. In fact, I know we will, right? You put the right people in, and they stay motivated and they see the bigger picture. Nothing but good things will come from that.
And it's the fact that you also took the time to do it as well. So
Yeah, and it is something that you do take a chance on. But then when you go to these other places and you hear how law enforcement is not, and I've always said this is why we work with the community, right? This is the value in the relationship with people in the community, regardless of whether or not they like your philosophy. They don't. The best relationships are not always the people that just say how great you guys are and we love you. And the best relationships are not the people that say, you can't even walk right. It's the balance.
Yeah, we weren't really sure what to expect walking into this last conference we went to because we were the only law enforcement there. And a lot of times I think media portrayals of the police department, especially in cold cases, is like the police did a horrible job on this. The police aren't releasing information. We had people ask us about, we're trying to FOIA information. Like, what's your thought process on that? And we kind of said, well, it is difficult because you're navigating the idea of, if we're actively looking at a case, we don't want to put information out. If at least for us, I said in the perfect world, you would have a full-time cold case unit. So then it makes more sense for us to reject FOIA requests on our cases because we're actively looking at them.
Exactly.
But one group was looking at a case from like 1966, and that agency was also not working on that case. And I said, at some point, there's got to be some balance of, are we just denying giving information just to deny it?
Yeah.
Because the case is 50-something years old and no one's looking at it. Like,
Collecting dust.
you got to do one or the other. If you're not looking at those cases, maybe you should give more information out. Or if you are looking at those cases, maybe you should be giving no information out. It just kind of depends. And, we've had people ask us about other cases, other cold cases that we're not publicizing right now. And our goal is to look at all those cases. We've been working through those. We have cases from the 80s. The goal would be in the future here to do another season where we cover all our cases from the 1980s. We cover our cases from the 1990s and so on, so we can get to those. Like you said, there's just two of us right now, and we're working through that process. We're also actively working on several cases that we're not talking about publicly at all. So it's a lot of juggling.
Yeah.
And every case matters. Every victim matters in all these cases, but we can't work 50 cases at the same time, So the goal would be hopefully we are able to look at some of these 70s cases, then we can move into the 1980s over the next year or next 2 years, or if I'm still here or Chris is here or whoever. That's the goal, is for this unit to go through all of those cases at some point.
Yeah, and give that information. I think it's a great point that you made. It's that relationship between the community and the information that you give, and using these buzzwords. My perspective is, if someone asks me, the Elgin Police Department, you say, is transparent, they're open, they're progressive. My question, and this is how I always think about it, is I would ask somebody, well, what do you actually do? Right? Like, great that you use those big buzzwords, right? But my thing is, like, if somebody were to literally ask me, what do you actually do? Here it is. This is why, this is how, this is what, right? So we have a minute left here. So just to preview, so next week we will be releasing the bonus episode for season 1, wrapping up season 1, introducing season 2. The week, I believe, of August 10th, 11th,
Yep.
around,
Yep.
season 2 will premiere. And so we're really, really excited for that. I'll have these guys on probably towards the end of August. We'll probably make them a usual guest maybe once every couple months so that they can come on and give some updates. Or if there's a significant break in the case, obviously we will be here. So thank you, Andrew, for all your work.
Thank you.
And Chris, thank you as well. And welcome to the group. You're going to do awesome. And
you.
do you guys have last things that you want to say before we say goodbye?
No, just please listen and give us information. No tip, like we've said in the past, is too small. We are happy to take any information that comes in.
We appreciate the support and looking forward to season 2.
All right. And thank you to WRMN for being gracious hosts, helping us with the podcast, always promoting our, what we're doing. So we truly appreciate you, and also our awesome Elgin community who 100% We cannot do what we do and be as successful if it were not for you. And we truly, truly appreciate you guys. So I hope everyone has a great weekend, and I will be back next Friday.
All right. Thanks so much, everyone. We'll be back with more local programming here in just a bit. Stay tuned.